Hello and welcome to Archive West Texas. I'm your host, Gordon Wilkerson, joined today by our producer, Rachel Boyd. Today we're visiting with Sandy Henry, one of the driving forces behind the creation and growth of the Science Spectrum, an institution that has inspired generations of children and families across West Texas. Sandy, welcome to Archive West Texas.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Before we get to the Science Spectrum, let's start with a little bit of your own story. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in several places. I was born in Tyler, Texas. But we lived during my early years in several other cities. Father was in the military and the Air Force. So I had a couple of elementary schools in California, and we were in El Paso for several years. I had some more high school in Guam, and then came to Lubbock from Guam. Actually, Dad was stationed in Wichita Falls with my grandmother here, needed some help, and the family came here to help her.
So
been here ever since.
Did you graduate from Lubbock High?
I had my senior year actually at Monterey.
Monterey. Right. All right. What were your first impressions of Lubbock and the South Plains after living all over the world?
Well, Lubbock was not exactly a tropical island. However, I had been in and out of Lubbock most of my life. My mother's family lived here. So wherever we were living, we would come to visit. So Lubbock was quite familiar, and it, frankly, at the time, was probably as much home as I had known anywhere.
How'd you meet your husband, Alan?
Oh, goodness. Barely missed each other and almost missed each other. I was a freshman, and I went with some friends to the Baptist Student Union. I was not Baptist at the time, but I went with him to the Baptist Student Union, and there he was. So we met at that point, but I didn't make much of it. He was graduating and didn't think I'd ever see him again. So lo and behold, he decides to go to graduate school and hang around for a while. So then we renewed our acquaintance and kind of went from there. So,
well, if there have been two people that have been more devoted servants to the city of Lubbock, I don't know who that would be. You guys have a tremendous legacy here. Tell me at what point the idea of a children's museum came to the forefront for you?
Probably more in the forefront when, in his early mayor years in the early 80s, we attended the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Philadelphia. This was a conference that encouraged family attendance, so we took our son at the time and cousin Carrie with us. So they had a great time with the historical places. The first event that was there was an evening at this place called the Franklin Institute. I was not familiar with science museums, but it was a curious place where everyone was having such a great time. These were families doing things together with these amazing exhibits, objects having to do with science technology that were interesting, they were interactive, and you began to wonder what this kind of thing was. It sort of hit a note in some of my background. Teacher, I guess, by trade, lived with a scientist-type father. I spoke a lot of this I call language, if you will. And we began to wonder, Alan, at the time, cities were looking for new and interesting entities that might enhance the quality of life for Lubbock, possibly touch on visitors that would come for conventions and tourism. And then, of course, for me, too, I saw the obvious educational benefit of that. So we started thinking about it, looking into it.
What were the next steps? I remember reading about a temporary exhibit at the South Plains Mall.
We did a lot of inquiry, a lot of asking around, found out that the Junior League actually had attempted something like this, and that other junior leagues had actually been quite instrumental in setting up science centers. So they were much more involved with Ronald McDonald House at the time. So they pretty well handed over their Area 5 files of other attempts to me to take a look at and kind of see what we could do. Talking to friends, talking to those others who actually had been to some of these and do something about them. Contacted this association that we found out about, Science and Technology Center, centered in Washington, D.C. They had conventions. We were advised to go to one. We did. Met some people, this sort of thing. And some of the advice that came out of it was to bring an exhibition here and test it out. So we got a group together, and this is where some of your other questions probably in the basement of our house. I set up kind of a 501c3, if you will, at the time. Anyway, contacted them all. They had a storefront available for a couple of weeks, brought the exhibition in. I was the one on particularly illusions. It was a typical science museum type exhibit there. We tried it out. We did some survey on the visitors that came in and played around with it and enjoyed it. And from then it looked like it was going to be something that would really work.
You referenced meeting in the basement of your house. Joe McKay was an early guest on this program.
Yes.
He said, you've got to talk to Sandy about getting the science spectrum off the ground. So you just called 10, 15 of your people that you knew would tell us how that came together.
We did. We figured, well, who were the stakeholders that could be invited who would be interested? So we had the mayor, Peck McMinn. We had superintendent of schools. We had certainly a host of friends such as Joe, got Phil Price to put together, we acquired some slides around and got him to put together a little dog and pony show, And then we just began introducing the topic at all and tried to gauge some interest. Some folks from the Ferris Corporation were there and other city people, business people around town, and some school board people. And then kind of went from the interest expressed there, which was really quite positive.
So what was your initial vision or your initial objective?
It was in the process of being formulated, I think. All I knew at that time were a couple of them that I'd been to. But in the process there of association with those that were so open, kind, and willing to help from the Association of Science Technology Centers, ASTEC as we call it, we were introduced to some other directors of museums, and one of which was Roy Schaefer from COSI. And he was an early mentor and said, why don't you get together a group of people and come up here and have them kick the tires, as he would say. I'll have my staff available. We'll explain whatever it was. And so we did exactly that. And some of those very ones that were in the basement were in attendance. We picked up Fred Busey out of Dallas to go with us. And those are the days when you could fly, have a wonderful day in Columbus, and come back to Lubbock in one day. In one day. Can't do that anymore. But Southwest Airlines, can you believe, funded the whole thing.
Really?
So it was quite an amazing. And from then on, it was just kind of trying to keep up with what was next.
Do you have any idea at the beginning how large this project would become?
I don't think anybody does. I think the one thing that they did tell us is that these type entities should reflect the community and that they were scalable. So part of our job was trying to figure out what the scale was for a place called Lubbock, Texas. We're kind of in the mid-range, if you will, of cities of size. We're not small, and we're not large. So most of these were in, at the time, were in larger cities. So what style, what kind of thing would work here? So that was part of the challenge.
Sandy, you talked about taking that trip to Columbus and kicking the tires on the museum up there. You organized your 501c3. Where was the first location of the Science Spectrum?
The first location as an official entity, I guess you would say, was actually in donated space there at the corner of 50th and Slide Road. We had done another, the second demonstration project, actually at that location facing 50th Street. And First Corporation had donated the space for it. So we actually brought in two exhibitions. Besides them all, we brought in another one, which was dinosaurs. But we set this one up more functioning like a beginning science center, if you will. And from that, then we went even further. And the actual one that was the true, let's go from here, you're an entity, you're open to the public, this kind of thing, with more of a science center setting and all, was facing Slide Road in that same building there, in about 10,000 square feet. So that we were there about 3.5 years.
Who were some of the early people that help staff it and launch it?
Oh, goodness. A number of folks. I'll tell you about one, and she will be honored, I guess, to mention. I did not know this story until many years later, having had further contact with Ginger Carrick. And Ginger was a young college student that came to volunteer and help and actually work for a while. Didn't know much of her background, but she did a great job. And she was one of the first to troop our Star Lab, which is a portable planetarium. Later on, I come to find out that that was a pivotal moment for her. She had been a bright student from El Paso who had many scholarships, but kind of squandered a little bit on her freshman year and got to be in kind of deep trouble in terms academically. Trying to bail herself out and stay in Texas Tech University, this job was very important to her. She goes on. I go on then later on to encounter her with the Alumni Association board. And then later on, come to find out that she is the first Hispanic woman to be director of NASA flight.
Wow.
So, and you may remember, I think she's got a married name now. She went on also to be on the Board of Regents of Texas Tech. So those are the stories that really warm your heart, and
Absolutely.
of the kids and of the people at the time who came your way and that are out in the world today.
That's a great story.
It is a great story.
So you're at the corner of 50th and Slide, and you're a fairly new 501c3. How's fundraising?
Oh, fundraising is always a difficult thing there. One of the challenges was that there was no other entity in town that charged an admission fee. So you'd kind of reference some of the difficulties, and one of that was, well, how can you get anyone to pay for something like this? Well, we kind of had to, or it wasn't going to work. Now, it's not that it paid all the expenses. We still had to do fundraising, which was your typical Wright grant applications, asked for sponsoring contributions and all the particular ones you would expect from a nonprofit organization to charge a bit for your program fees that when you took a program out somewhere else. So that was kind of the mix that still remains today that kind of that helped it keep going.
How did you find the permanent location on the South Loop?
We determined that where we were was not going to be a long-term potential. 2 or 3 things. There was a busy corner. There was no room for expansion, and the building really wasn't optimum in the long term for what we needed. So we began to look around. It turned out that there was a board member who was aware of this building on the South Loop 289 that would be available possibly to the right 501c organization. Combination of buy some, we'll donate some. And we looked at the building. I can't say I was one of the, I was more of the ye of little faith ones that went out there. It was a office building. It was Time DC Motor Freight, but it had been vacant for years. It was formerly occupied by Texas Instruments, actually. But low ceilings, a lot of work that needed to be done. The good news is, yes, a lot of open space. The bad news is it had asbestos. That's where the donation part came in. Yeah. Find someone who would tackle that in the day, which is sort of painful. But that was kind of how we came across the building, decided that its location was good on the loop, ability to get there. The growth of Lubbock was kind of going south and west, and it was a good decision.
It's a great location. And the west part was constructed new, is that right?
Yes. When we did the plan then as to what we would do, we also included this thing called an Omni-Max IMAX theater. To do that then required some space, but also that we needed the space for parking, which was then to the west there. So as your question kind of involved an entity being involved a bit with the city in terms of, you're talking about fundraising for that particular building. the city took on the theater and granted us the space there, and we had sort of an easement kind of a thing. We now are in charge for all of the Omni and all of the theater and all of the space there, but we had to capture and add that part to the actual building. The street, curiously, had already been closed, so that was helpful. So it made it where we could kind of expand, add a theater, and also have the parking lot.
When you brought the Omni to Lubbock, that was very cutting edge technology.
It was.
How many were there in the country?
At the time, I don't know if I can tell you exactly, but there weren't all that many of them, probably 100 or less. They were in larger cities. Maybe the 100 less could have been in the world at that time. Larger cities, but it was a phenomenon that was largely associated with a science center or a museum of some sort. There were not the commercial ones that you see now. That came later after the company sold. So having noticed this then with other science museums, we started looking into it and contacted the company, and again learned that these things were scalable and they needed to fit the size of your community. It came in all sizes, but they offered a wonderful ability with a huge, large screen and the documentary emphasis to engage people to go places that perhaps they would never go in their entire lives. And that was part of the attraction.
What do you remember about opening day on the South Loop?
Oh, on the South Loop, wow. We were scrambling still. Some things still weren't finished, but it was exciting. Most of the things were in place, and we were anticipating comments from people of how they would react to it all. And it was quite positive. Families came and even sent us back later picture books that they had made from their experience. And anyway, a very gratifying moment.
Absolutely. Is there one enduring exhibit that people tend to remember generation upon generation? I'm thinking of the little thing with the balls and I don't even know what it's called. But
okay, I think I know which one you mean, and that's probably one of the ones. It's probably one of the first ones outside of going to a science center that we had encountered that actually, and it wasn't in a museum setting, it was in airports. And there was one in the Guam airport, can you imagine? And these are the kinetic ball machines, if you will. And there's so much science and so much technology involved in these things, but they're mesmerizing. And the one, we just had to have one. So I contacted George Rhodes, who was the probably preeminent maker of these ball machines. And then he just said, well, what do you want? And what do you want to do? And by then I'd formulated a bit of a thought of what I wanted. I didn't want it to, be the predominant color of the day, but so he gave me another color. And I said, I just want it to do a lot of things and make a lot of noise. And it did. So he put everything he could think of in it anyway. George has long since passed, and it's gone to another company, but it was so exciting. It has not failed in terms of certain parts of it where the ball goes down, bounces the plate, and goes up in the basket. That continues to really be a marvel to me.
Well, it's got to be what? 40 years old?
The whole, of course, we have to clean it every now and then with the West Texas dirt and all, and a ball will jump the railing occasionally. But other than that, it's been pretty much flawless and quite a marvel, and it's pretty simple. Other people have tried to replicate what he's done, but he probably did the best job. Anyway, much fun.
As you say, it is mesmerizing. Sandy, this wasn't on my list, but do you have any idea how many people the Science Spectrum has had through its doors over the years?
I really, really don't, but it's well over 1 million at this point in time. I should look that up.
Well, and these people come from not just Lubbock, but you serve a tremendously broad area here.
We serve on a regular basis. We like to say anywhere we can go and come in a day. So that puts quite a bit of radius around Lubbock. We have at least a couple 100 miles. So we have those coming from Amarillo, Midland, Odessa, draw a circle around. And so you get New Mexico kiddos as well, too. But it's a pretty good radius. But Lubbock also has quite a bit of a number of folk coming in for the university and other activities going around, UIL activities. And also we see people with visitation this summer, grandparents coming in, kids coming in. from all over, actually. So sometimes when we have an exhibition, we do a guest book there, and that's where we really see where people have come from.
Science education has changed significantly over the past decades. How does the museum evolve to keep pace with things?
Oh, goodness. It has changed quite a bit. Basically, from your museums where you just look and see a bunch of apparatus and things like that, where you memorize things and whatever, to then the advent where things became a little more experiential, a little more active, a little more critical thinking type things came in, particularly to the 60s when the Kennedy and the space race and Sputnik, and the emphasis then on the need for science and technology awareness, careers, if we were going to go future wise. So these things called science centers actually came into prominence more from that time on, the 60s on, and they were opening up with quite a bit. They were the fastest growing category actually of museum anywhere. So that was sort of the beginning, I guess, of the thing called a science center or science museum, however you want to put it. It keeping up is certainly in this day and time as things accelerate quite quickly, but mainly where people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and they want instant reaction, instant confirmation and all. But that's in one way kind of the great aspect, I guess, of the museum, is that because we are interactive and experimental, there's something about the human nature that wants to do something, and you notice that in kids who, your own children or whatever, come and say, I do it myself, in other words, quit trying to do it for me. They want to do it themselves.
And
they
it's
want to
hands-on.
experience it. Hands-on, absolutely hands-on and all. So yes, because of the, I guess, the extension band, because we are here with a great return visit, we need to change things a lot. Sometimes we have to do that more through programming because that can change faster than actual exhibits on the floor can. They're expensive. Their timelines to be produced are long. If something can be working in the morning and 10 minutes later can be broken, it's just the exuberance sometimes of and the extra strength that people seem to have when they get there that can cause something to fail. Parts can be hard to get. It can take a while. And the actual exhibits on the floor, are difficult to try to keep going all the time. It's not just here, it's everywhere that has one. But you try to do the best you can with the circumstances of getting what you need and the parts to person power to be able to do it. Sometimes we have to create some of our own solutions that they aren't necessarily out there. But yes, it's an ongoing challenge, but try to have something that'll make you want to come back. There are things there, though, that are perennial, as you say. And I've got people who are bringing their children and grandchildren to see that one thing that they loved as a kid. And if you take it out, they are really unhappy. So how you gauge that is difficult.
Yes. How do you gear up for a weekend like Critter Fest?
Oh, my goodness. That takes James probably months in advance, lining up the people to come, because a lot of it is area participation. But then we try to have a special show, if you will, event, and those are getting fewer and harder between to come and do it. And then the volunteers, you need to carry it on. So he's a past master at it now. We've been doing it for years, and it's coming up in July this year instead of June. But we're going to extend butterflies a little longer into June. But anyway, yes, it's quite an operation.
How important are your partnerships with schools and homeschool families and educators of all varieties?
Very important, because I think that's a part of the mission, if it is to bring science awareness to everyone. But it's not the schools and these other entities don't do that. But what we'd hope to do is fill in the gaps, to do things they can't do, so that we can enrich what they are fundamentally doing in education, and give another little fun, perhaps, outlet to learn a little more, or, as I say, bring something different to enhance the usual program.
What excites you most about the future for the science spectrum?
Oh, gee, there are a lot more kiddos out there. And each year there are more kids being born and more kids that were families and all. And And I think the impact that it can be made not only in a personal, individual, or family, but for the community, and basically you can go on from that. We're only going to do as well nationally, state, the world is the capable people that we have who are prepared to be able to handle the challenges that looks like are going to be more and more technical and involve a lot of science understanding. If we can get rid of this idea that science is difficult or that science is something I can't do because I'm not smart enough, that's ridiculous. I mean, everyone's a scientist. Have you ever thought about something, ever tried out a few things to see what was happening, ever came to some conclusion or whatever, and all? You were a scientist. You did the scientific method. It's not difficult. It's the way we live. It's the world around us. It's how we're involved in our place in the planet. And appreciation of it may be more and more important in how we deal with it and keep the vital place that we live in, I guess.
There you go. Looking back over the whole process, the whole journey, what's been most personally rewarding for you?
Oh, I think maybe two things. Maybe one you would expect in the comments people have said that it meant something to them, that your efforts did maybe result in the betterment of something or someone somewhere, that it had a significant value to these people. You always wonder whether what you do has any value to anybody else, or is it just your personal whim. We have employed over 700 people, largely children and adults as well. And they've gone on to significant, maybe not all, the purpose wasn't that everybody had to be a scientist or an engineer or whatever, but they've gone on to play significant roles in their own world and entity. I guess for me personally, I've learned a lot about myself. You always, with whatever you do, you learn a little more about you. And I think I would have never known I either could do some of these things or maybe some things I should not want to do from now on, but yet develop maybe skills you never had any idea or would never have known that you had. So in some ways, kind of everything we do makes you kind of who you are.
Well, it's a wonderful project and a tremendous asset to the community. We have a tradition here where we ask our guests for any words of wisdom they might have to share with our listeners, and wonder if you've got anything you'd like to share.
Oh, goodness. This time of year, you always wondered what you would have said at that if you were the speaker at graduation. But anyway, I think one is that as one goes about, find something you can be passionate about, preferably that has a dimension that serves someone else. And you're willing to devote an incredible amount of time in your life to, because it will bring more rewards than you can ever imagine. And they won't always be your self-indulgence, but it will be very fulfilling, I think, and give you a kind of a warm feeling in your heart.
I think the science spectrum is a perfect illustration of that wisdom.
Thank you.
Sandy, thank you for taking time today to share your story with us.
Thank you.
Thank to each of you for listening. Please join us again next week for another edition of Archive West Texas.